So this is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel being broadcast only on the internet at 10 minutes past 9 in the morning of Tuesday, the 8th of June 2021, 09:10 hours GMT in London, in the UK, within quotation marks because of the likely departure of Scotland from the United Kingdom caused by the lies by Boris Johnson and others. And the Times today, Tuesday, the 8th of June 2021, has the main lead item on page 1, admitting that lockdown lifting is said to be delayed by 2 weeks. Now, this is the admission by Johnson, which is absolutely typical of the pattern of reluctant action by the dysfunctioning Boris Johnson. And this is something that they have been dragging on for weeks. So there are 3 names of the writers or byline holders for this piece, which is subheaded "Vaccines in Race to Keep Up with Indian Strain." Indian strain as in the surge of the virus in the UK. Britain's roadmap for easing lockdown could be delayed. They're still kind of dragging it. They're not being straightforward with the readers. Well, those readers were not the gullibles. Britain's roadmap for easing lockdown could be delayed by a fortnight, with cabinet ministers increasingly pessimistic about a downbeat briefing. Reading again. Britain's roadmap for easing lockdown could be delayed by a fortnight, with cabinet ministers increasingly pessimistic after a downbeat briefing from Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance. The delay would enable all over 50s to be fully vaccinated and leave sufficient time for jabs to take effect before restrictions are lifted. Whitty, the chief medical officer for England, and Vallance, the chief scientific officer, yesterday gave a briefing to ministers on the latest data that was described as fairly grim. And part of the paragraphs underneath that include this one. Of the 12,383 cases of the Indian variant that have been identified, 126 have led to hospital admissions. 83 of the patients had not been vaccinated at all. 28 had received 1 dose and 3 had received both doses. The UK recorded 5,683 coronavirus cases yesterday, up 68% in a week, and 1 death related to COVID. Ministers believe that the easing of the restrictions may need to be delayed to ensure that all over 50s are protected. A cabinet source said that Whitty and Vallance had expressed reservation about the timetable. They emphasized again that the vaccine did not provide 100% protection, and there were real concerns about the transmissibility of the new variants, the source said. And on the other side, I mean, this is part of the piece that I have read. It's not the whole piece, but the substance is there already in what I have read out. Now, there is a piece on the right hand column of the Times today, which shows that Boris Johnson has been backing a racist. I mean, this is the normal thing that Boris Johnson does. He backs a racist. Boris Johnson has called on the England and Wales Cricket Board to rethink its decision to suspend Ollie Robinson over racist and sexist tweets he posted when a teenager. Johnson backed Oliver Dowden, the culture secretary, who described the suspension as over the top, arguing that Robinson's teenage comments were made almost a decade ago and he had apologized. Now, this is completely opposite to what the Guardian is saying. And this is the Guardian today. And we shall read that one. This is the racist Twitter. And it's on page 5 of the Guardian today. And it says, or it reads, this is given a space by the Guardian. And it says, Johnson and Dowden criticize Ollie Robinson's suspension as over the top. Now, if it is over the top, then what is not over the top? Because any disciplinary action against a racist is going to break the norm of not taking any disciplinary action. So it's going to be something other than not doing anything. And doing anything is over the top. Then what's the point of any disciplinary action? What's the point of having any option on the part of the football regulating authorities to take action on a matter like this? And the matter is that as the Guardian says with the first paragraph, Boris Johnson and the Sports Minister Oliver Dowden have both criticized the England and Wales Cricket Board's decision to suspend the bowler. Ollie Robinson is not football, it's the cricket board, not the football authority, the cricket board from international cricket while it conducts an investigation into offensive tweets published in 2012 and 2013, with Dowden insisting the move was over the top. Robinson excelled on his debut in England's first test against New Zealand, which ended in a draw on Sunday, taking 7 wickets and scoring 42 in the first innings. His performance was all the more impressive for having been played out amid the controversy caused by the tweets, which were rediscovered and widely distributed as play progressed on the opening day. His suspension was announced on Sunday night, ruling him out of the second test, which starts in Birmingham on Thursday, and potentially beyond. The tweets, in one of which he wrote that my new Muslim friend is the bomb. Now that is absolutely outrageous. He's openly being criminal and hateful. I mean, if whoever it is, that he is calling his new Muslim friend is a bomb, what would he call other Muslims? His friend is a bomb. What would he call other Muslims? I mean, if bomb is not the over-the-top description, then what would be? So what is the impact? What's the implication of a bomb? If somebody is described as a bomb, then how would society be justified in treating them? If a person is identified as a bomb, then they would be treated as a bomb, even if this is a rhetorical kind of state or statement. Where does it lead to? What is the actual state of attitude towards a Muslim? Is every Muslim a bomb? Neither Dowden nor Johnson is saying anything about any of this that I am saying. Now, if Johnson is saying that this anti-Muslim hate tweet was written and posted when the hater was age 16, so therefore they were young, then what age was Shamima Begum, robbed of her British by birth, nationality and citizenship, and which particular statement Shamima Begum made? Aged 16 was used to deny her citizenship by birth, British citizenship by birth, raising the questions. And so the front page treatment the Times gave the front page excuse for the anti-Muslim provocation and anti-Muslim incitement. And by doing that, the Times is denying both the impact and the record and the institutional nature of racism and anti-Muslim hatred. Because remember what Johnson claimed in promoting the denial covered by the appearance of a commission appointed by the stooge Munira Mirza. Munira Mirza is a North of England born Pakistani origin female who was generally contemporary of Boris Johnson while attending, quote, Oxford, and whom Boris Johnson recruited as one of his top paid employees when he was installed as the incumbent in the corrupt post of mayor at the expense of London. Now, Mirza, although she is of Pakistani origin, is as anti-Muslim generally and as servile to the anti-Muslim, corrupt, racist, pro-imperialist deniers and denials agenda as the worst non-Pakistani, let's say, Anglo-Saxon, European origin, racist, anti-Muslim could be. So Munira Mirza and Tony Sewers, who were the main front persons of the denial report, said that there was no institutional racism in Britain. Now, if that is the case, which is not the case, but if that is the case, for the sake of this particular part of the discussion, then what on earth was Johnson, who is incumbent in the post of Prime Minister, and Dowden, who is incumbent as a member of Johnson's cabinet, what on earth are they doing? Interfering with an apparent institutional attempt to deal with racism and anti-Muslim hatred. Not only is Johnson caught in this denial and this comment as being an absolute brazen racist anti-Muslim liar, he is also exposed as unfit because he cannot see the intellectual idiocy of his position. Now here is the Guardian's piece about that racist anti-Muslim tweet. And it's a piece that we shall not be reading, but we shall be posting on the Twitter account, but we shall be commenting on the parts of it. And this piece, the analysis by Ali Martin. Ali is not a Muslim name. This is either Alistair or something else, being shortened to Ali. As so often happens in the anglicized Western names, being abbreviated to Ali, thus giving a misleading impression of a link that doesn't exist with Muslim or Arabic. So this one by Ali Martin is saying that it is worth remembering that there is a wider context to all of this, not least on the subject of race and racism. He's leaving out the core of the tweet, which was the anti-Muslim hostility. So there is a denial on the part of the Guardian, even if they are kind of publishing something that is not as racist in denial as the Times. So it's worth remembering that there is a wider context to all of this, not least on the subject of race and racism. Again, I said, he's leaving out the Robinson anti-Muslim part of the Robinson tweet. For a start, the professional game, cricket, does not remotely reflect the demographics of those playing the sport recreationally. Now, demography is not the same thing as race. Demography can include the factor of race, but without an explanation or explanatory note added to the sentence containing demography, it doesn't represent a concern about race or racism. So that's where the Guardian's own racism and its timidity and stupidity lie. So the Guardian pretends to be not like the majority of the racist anti-Muslim Fleet Street, but it is, as I have explained. So where are the Muslims? There is no reference to any Muslim in these pieces, and I'll continue. There has been a tide of complaints about English cricket's recent past, and it doesn't say complaints about racism. Remember that. Complaint can be anything unless you specify. And if you're talking about racism and complaints about racism, then you must refer to racism and the complaints against racism dominating England cricket. So reading again after that clarification by me, and there has been a tide of complaints about English cricket's recent past, be it the allegation of institutional racism from the former umpires John Holder and Ismail Dawood, the probe into Azim Rafiq's time at Yorkshire, something that is proving more glacial than England's battling at Lord's, or the experiences Michael Carberry shared last year. Robinson may be drawing the focus right now, but the sports problems remain far greater. And it doesn't say the sports racist problem. And without that, it could be anything. It could be litter. It could be the attitude to climate change. So you has to be specific and exact. And it has to be frank and truthful and anti-racist. The Guardian is none of these, which it must be. Therefore, the Guardian is as sick and as racist as the rest of Fleet Street. And then there are another piece about Dowden. exclusion over the top, says Minister Dowden. And we shall go back to page 5, where Dowden is being promoted with this comment that exclusion of Robinson is over the top. We shall come to page 5 very shortly. Okay, so the Guardian has got kind of 4 pages over which this item is spread. So one is on page 4, where there is a leading, positive, very promotional, favorable picture of Robinson. And the Guardian is being racist in describing it, the item or the items or the event or the events concerning the suspension of Robinson as merely. So it's downplaying as merely as a row. It's not, the Guardian is not talking about this as being connected with any campaign whatsoever. Notice what I'm saying. There is no campaign. So, in the last few weeks, we have said exclusively that the use by Fleet Street papers and their broadcasting counterparts in Britain of the concept or the term of rebellion about a very small number of members of parliament, conservatives, as rebels over the cut by Boris Johnson to the budget, which should be as required by the international treaties signed by the United Kingdom. The cut by £4 billion to the overseas aid budget to poorer countries. The concern by these MPs constitute a rebellion. And we have said this is absolutely untrue and untruthful and stupid. So we focus in this diagnosis of the Fleet Street papers. We focus on the language they use, the content they publish, the agenda these users of the language and the agenda and the contents support or represent and exhibit. So Fleet Street we find daily in a state of sickness, linguistically, morally, ethically, and of course, in terms of race and racism, racially, and in terms of faith. And what we are doing daily is publishing the alternative, comprehensive collection of analysis and creating the model, theoretical, intellectual, moral model of what should be the service that the quote media should provide to the public. That's what we're doing. And it's not available. Nothing comparable to us is available anywhere, on any platform, any channel, any broadcaster, any publisher, anywhere. And we include in this statement that there is no such similar service which is unique, which is original, available to the viewers, the public, or publicly from any academic institution, any publishing, broadcasting, news network, outlet in any continent. That is what we are asserting. In any continent. If you or anyone you know is aware of any evidence that shows that what we are saying is not currently accurate, then you can contact us by sending a direct message by Twitter. The Twitter address is there, just underneath me on the banner. That is static banner, not the running banner, but the banner that is static on the last of the 3 lines, which says 24/7 updates on, and the address is there, Khoodeelaar, Twitter. Twitter sign, that is the copyright sign, not the copyright sign, but the @ sign, @Khoodeelaar. And we are doing this by not seeking, not expecting, not receiving any financial or other contribution or support. So what we are doing is providing the equivalent in physical terms, in logistical terms, the equivalent service that cannot be provided by just a one-off accidental broadcaster or commenter. It has to be created, worked on, and prepared and checked and verified by the input that is equivalent to a big department containing all manner of contributors and checkers and so on. Now we make the point about Oliver Dowden. First we quote Dowden, and then we condemn him. Because a spokesman for Boris Johnson made clear, The Guardian says, that Johnson is supportive of Dowden's stance. Quote, as he set out, these were comments made more than a decade ago, written by someone as a teenager, and for which they have rightly apologized. Now, as we can factually make a reference again to Shamima Begum. As we say, we don't have any contact with Shamima Begum, never have had any contact with anyone involved with her in any way. All our comments and observations and the demand for justice for her and the other 3 girls, whether they are dead or alive, against the corrupt and criminal and racist behavior of the crooked Tower Hamlets, the local council. They're all based on publicly published and publicly accessible and clearly sourced evidence. We have no unsourced, secret, unaccounted for contact with anybody. And we are doing this campaign about Shamima Begum based on the evidence available publicly. So when they say that Shamima Begum did not represent a safe person for Britain, which meant that she was a threat to the country, they needed to remove her citizenship. We cite the cases of this racist and anti-Muslim person, this Robinson, and others who have made and carried out far more offensive, dangerous, threatening activities than Shamima Begum has done. And yet, all of those others have been allowed to retain their citizenship. So we just make that point. And we say that the fact that they have not done that to the others, and they have robbed Shamima Begum of her citizenship, shows that they are prejudiced against Shamima Begum. Not because of the facts of her behavior, but because of race and faith to which she, by birth, belongs. Okay, so Dowden is quoted in The Guardian as saying, Ollie Robinson's tweets were offensive and wrong, Dowden tweeted. They are also a decade old and written by a teenager. Now, whether they are a decade old or 6 years old or 5 years old or 4 years old, whatever the length of time being considered as relevant to what action is taken about them, the same criteria should apply to Shamima Begum. Although she didn't make any such comments or any such tweets as Ollie Robinson has done. And the fact that Dowden is saying that these tweets by Ollie Robinson were made by Ollie Robinson when he was aged 16, a teenager. Whatever, as I said before, Shamima Begum allegedly said, if there is evidence that she said anything, she had only said those things before she was even out of her teens. So why deny her citizenship as opposed to Ollie Robinson, the others? There are dozens of others who are anti-Muslim and racist and hateful and inciting hatred, racist hatred, religion-based hatred. So we shall put that as part of the ongoing evidential narrative that we are publishing. Diagnostic narrative. And The Guardian doesn't mention that. The Guardian doesn't mention any of the things that I have been mentioning in this edition, which on the facts of The Guardians, not mentioning them or even implying them, any of them, makes The Guardian as sick as the rest of the Fleet Street racist anti-Muslim papers. And as I've said before, in previous editions, this paper is called the Eye newspaper. Look at the red colored eye on the right of the screen or the left of the screen, depending on where you are looking at. The red one, the red letter I. I've said that this one was launched as a kind of spin-off from the Independent, which is now only online, available online. So this one became kind of quite successful in terms of selling. And the success was based on the fact that it wasn't repeating the Daily Mail or the Scum or the Beaverbrook Express or the bribing Boris Johnson graph, the so-called Daily Telegraph, but was publishing concise versions of news items and comments that were on the facts, quite justifiably independent of the other parts of Fleet Street. That was before. But now it has become an extension of Boris Johnson's propaganda. This is absolutely propaganda line. And it's even more ferociously propagandist for Boris Johnson than the Daily Mail is. We shall come to that aspect of propaganda and lying later. Now, there is a line about Northern Ireland in relation to Brexit. And as we have pointed out factually before, the line about Northern Ireland, about Brexit, that Joe Biden has taken is more popular with practical observers than anything Johnson has represented so far, if he has been able to come across as a coherent representative of any position taken in the name of the British government. Now, this is the page 6 piece on the I newspaper about page 6 about Joe Biden's stance on Northern Ireland. And this is being kind of pegged to the G7 summit later this week, which is reported to be due on Friday this week. And its heading is Biden to confront Boris Johnson over Northern Ireland protocol at G7 summit. Now remember the fact contained on the newspaper's contents. We said that the newspapers are in denial, the Fleet Street papers are liars, and the Fleet Street papers are nothing to do with the many. Remember, this is the unique description of this collection of liars and lying and propaganda. The Northern Ireland Protocol, it doesn't say anything. What does protocol mean? Protocol is a generic word, a collection of things. So every time they say Northern Ireland Protocol, they should not be saying protocol. They should be saying what the protocol actually consists of, so that people can read and understand. So again, in the content of the copy of this piece, they are not talking about the protocol, what it means. And in the detail of the piece or detail of the coverage, they're adding this: US President Joe Biden, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and French President Emmanuel Macron will confront Mr. Johnson on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Mr. Biden is likely to support a minimum global corporate tax and push allies to add pressure on China. Ms. Merkel has set out plans for Germany's stronger target to cut emissions to net zero by 2045. Mr. Macron has said that wealthy nations should set aside 5% of their vaccines for Africa and increase COVAX funding. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi has spoken about vaccine access, and Japan's Prime Minister Yoshida Suga is under pressure to end his country's support for the coal development. He has joined the European Union in voicing concerns about China. Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, said he will work to keep people healthy, create jobs, and strengthen democratic values. Now, it doesn't say the details about what they mean by Northern Ireland Protocol. What they actually mean is that Boris Johnson is seen as engaged in a conspiracy to sabotage the peace process, the Good Friday Agreement that has provided comparative peace in Northern Ireland for the last, let's say, 15 years plus. And the Northern Ireland Good Friday Agreement is something that the United States is on the record as having guaranteed. That is to say, if any attempt is made by the British government to break the Good Friday Agreement, that the American state will intervene to preserve it. It's a very significant kind of factor. But reading the British newspaper, the Fleet Street newspapers, you would not see that. You would not see that Boris Johnson is not in a space which is stronger, which is much stronger than it is. Because in order to get the promotion and propaganda for the purpose of influencing the gullibles to vote for him, Johnson has to show that he is doing something contradictory at once, and doing so not being contradictory. That is to say, while he is threatening, and he has been threatening the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement, which will automatically create riots in Northern Ireland, thus reviving the violence that took place over decades. And he will undermine the United Kingdom, because a violent Northern Ireland will physically threaten the United Kingdom. So he's saying that he will do that. He will cause the riots and the violence, and he will preserve peace in Northern Ireland. And he will ensure that Northern Ireland remains part of the UK. That is an example, an acute example, a current example of Boris Johnson being Boris Johnson being correctly described as unfit for office. Now, we have been calling him unfit for office for 15 years, 14 years. But nobody else has been. But now, Dominic Cummings, who was his chief advisor until a few months ago, let's say, has confirmed that Boris Johnson is unfit for purpose. And the contents of Dominic Cummings' statement now on the record. He made the statement on the 26th of May when he appeared before a small committee of UK members of parliament called Technical and Business Select Committee, chaired for the hearing by a former Lib Dem who turned Conservative, Greg Clark. And Cummings's details about Boris Johnson's unfitness are contained in quite a lengthy report. So let's see where. So in this one, Sky News reported on the following day, Thursday, the 27th of May, 2021 at 6:28 hours UK time, which is 06:28 GMT on Thursday, the 27th of May, 2021. And this Sky News online item is headed Dominic Cummings, key points from his evidence to select committee over UK's coronavirus strategy. Now let's see if he has got anything about Ireland. Okay, but there is a kind of related section where it says crackers. Now, crackers is a colloquial word meaning mad, absolutely insane, a lunatic. Cummings said it is just completely crackers. That is insane, unbelievable, incredible that someone like me should have been in there, number 10 Downing Street. Just the same as it is crackers that Boris Johnson was in there. And that the choice at the last election was Jeremy Corbyn. He added, there is so many thousands and thousands of wonderful people in this country who could provide better leadership than either of those two, that is Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. And there is obviously something terribly wrong with the political parties if that's the best that they can do. Well, I agree with that assessment absolutely on the evidence, not because of where it is coming from, because I've been saying the same thing for a very long time. Mr. Cummings said he heard the Prime Minister say he, that is Boris Johnson, would rather see bodies piled high than go into a third lockdown, which Boris Johnson has flatly denied. That is, Johnson has said that he didn't say that. But everyone believes that Johnson did say that, would have said that, and he's showing, even now in the reluctance to continue the current level of the lockdown, that he would have done that. He would have delayed, he would have denied, and he would have said, let thousands of people die. Then there is a quote here. I heard that in the Prime Minister's study, that was not in September though, that was immediately after he finally made the decision to do the lockdown on 31st of October. And then it says, Boris Johnson changes his mind 10 times a day. Mr. Cummings rejected the idea that there were major communications issues during the pandemic. Rather, he said, it was difficult to convey effectively bad policy, bad decisions, bad planning, bad operational capability. He added, it doesn't matter if you've got great people doing communications. If the prime minister changes his mind 10 times a day and then calls up the media and contradicts his own policy day after day, you are going to have a communications disaster, which is absolutely a logical statement to make. And then this summary of the evidence given by Cummings as published by Sky News. Matt Hancock should have been sacked for lying. This is what he's saying in that evidence. So remember what the Times said, and we referred to the Times editorial in April, when at the beginning of April, Johnson was absolutely insanely kind of ambitious to fly to India to meet Narendra Modi. Now, all of that was happening literally while Johnson was allowing thousands of carriers from India, carriers of the virus, to enter the UK. And the Times leader comment at that time supported Johnson's plan to fly to India to meet Narendra Modi. Now, remember, that was the time when Modi's own role in unleashing the latest dangerous, deadly surge in the virus had been going on. So the Times wrote a stupid editorial saying that Johnson urgently needed to meet Narendra Modi. Now here is so we'll move on back to Ollie Robinson being promoted by the racist Daily Scum. And here is the right-wing, very far-right racist, anti-Muslim hate propagandist, Douglas Murray. And he's saying, are we now expected to be perfect from the cradle? Our vengeful society needs to grow up. Remember what they're saying about vengeful. The vengeful society is not vengeful for taking away the citizenship from Shamima Begum. It is behaving perfectly according to that. But it is being vengeful when mildly kind of disciplining Ollie Robinson for his anti-Muslim tweets. And Douglas Murray is one of the promoters of all things racist. And the fact that he's been given this big space by the dirty digger Murdoch scum is part of the norm. And they've got an editorial on top of the Douglas Murray incitement to racist hatred. And it's the type of racist denial shown by the dirty digger Murdoch scum. The daily or 24 hours feed the ignorance and backwardness and racism and the stupidity and idiocy of the gullibles. And they got a piece about 2 girls being murdered by a murderer who is now at the center of the controversy because he's getting a parole. And now there is a criminal called Abdul Elahi in Birmingham who has been found guilty of 157 offenses against women and girls. He sexually abused and degraded them and then blackmailed them. Now, where does that Abdul Elahi come from? That name is, of course, a Muslim name, and Birmingham has got a significant part of the population that is Muslim. Now, this criminal is only age 26. So where did he learn this crime? And where did he think that this was something that was acceptable in society, to his victims, to anybody? And I can say that there is no provision for teachings about Islam and morality and ethics for the majority of the people who are born Muslim or born to Muslim families in this country. There is absolutely nothing. that says that this is the line of, if you like, responsibility. This is the line of awareness for Muslims. There is nothing. And there is no real Muslim media, despite the fact that literally hundreds of millions of pounds are kind of provided by central government and businesses and others to so-called Muslim organizations and non-profit charities and whatever. But they're not delivering. And the fact that they're not delivering is actually directly linked with the organized crime and individual crimes committed by Muslims. So we shall be talking more about that again in due course. So let's put this one on to the camera, this one from the scum. Well, I've got the front page. Harry takes 5 months off. We shall not comment on that one, except to say that anything that Fleet Street Daily Mail or the scum runs about Meghan Markle or Harry must be seen in the context of their needing a diversion, almost plausible diversion away from failures of Boris Johnson. So that's what it is to begin with. But it also serves as a continuation of adverse publicity at the expense of Meghan Markle and Harry Windsor. So this is Douglas Murray. This is the one in the red. This is the one, and he's saying, are we now expected to be perfect from the cradle? Our vengeful society needs to grow up. He is okay if the society continues to be vengeful against the likes of Shamima Begum. Here is the editorial. Supporting Ollie Robinson there. And the I newspaper, which is, as I said, is more right-wing now, editorially, than the Daily Mail, is now abusing this term rebels. Even though Lindsay Hoyle, the current Speaker in the House of Commons, following the resignation of John Barker. Now, Barker was a Conservative member of Parliament when he was first elected Speaker, whereas his successor, Lindsay Hoyle, whose Hoyle rhymes with foil, that is to defeat, to undermine, which is what he has been doing, undermining parliamentary democracy. And Hoyle is a racist as well. He's a Labour card-carrying member when he first became elected. Now, Hoyle has scrapped the bid by the very small number of MPs, Conservative MPs, to stage a kind of vote on the cut to the foreign aid budget, so-called. And yet, the I newspaper is calling them rebels. They're not rebels and they're not attacking anything. The literal truth of the matter is that the UK's obligation to provide not 0.7%, not even 1%, it's not 0.7% of the UK's relevant gross domestic product every fiscal year, let's say. That is to say, every year that is covered by the budget, not the calendar year. This obligation to spend 0.7% on overseas aid is part of the treaty obligation that the state, the UK is under. Let's check the what is this one saying? And this is the account by the BBC, let's say. It says it's written in a 21 hours ago, and it's in the context of the coverage of the G7 banality. Foreign aid cuts could see lives lost, warns senior Tory. Now, this is a senior Tory who is obviously one of these so-called rebels. And there are three other items in there. And it says UK foreign aid cut. Where does it go and what is it used for? That's the BBC. The UK is temporarily cutting back money it gives to other countries in a move which some charities say will harm poor communities around the world. The government says that the impact of the pandemic on the UK's finances means there has to be a temporary reduction in foreign aid. That is the government line that the BBC is leading with. And the next sentence and paragraph is, The target for foreign aid spend has usually been 0.7% of gross national income. Okay, GNI. But that will come down to 0.5, which will be around £4 billion less. But what is the money actually used for? In 2020, Britain spent 14.5 billion on aid, meeting that 0.7% target, according to provisional data. There has always been debate over the UK's aid spend, with some people saying the UK shouldn't be helping people overseas while cutting services at home. Now, this is an absolutely untruthful analogy and statement. We shall come to that untruthfulness later. Others say it's a mark of the UK's generosity and helps address the difference in wealth between developed and developing countries and helping to save lives. This too is a lie. And remember, the BBC is not mentioning the international agreement and treaties. And it's a complete, absolute pack of lies. Now, because the international agreement, the treaties, this is not about one particular agreement or treaty. There are a whole series of international agreements. And then first of all, these agreements, of which the 7% minimum owed by the UK is a part, these agreements are actually entered into by the UK for the benefit of UK companies and UK businesses. And that's a concession. That 0.7% is a concession which the BBC is criminally lying and being silent about. Remember what he said? That the liars of the British media, the Fleet Street, which is the focal collection that we diagnose, include the main broadcasting outlets, and the BBC still boasts of being the world's biggest broadcaster. So if the world's biggest broadcaster is perpetrating such brazen lies on such a central issue, which is the issue being central because the so-called rebels, the critical MPs, the MPs who are critical of the government, not critical number, but critical of government over the cuts, they are the ones who are being featured in the stories, including leading with the word rebels. They're saying the rebels go on attack after Prime Minister dodges aid vote. Now, that is not true. Johnson didn't dodge the vote because the vote was not held. So the question of dodging doesn't arise. Remember the linguistic idiocy that we are pointing out. What Douglas Hoyle did was to foil a vote taking place at all. Douglas Hoyle did foil the vote taking place, and he abused his position as the current speaker of the House of Commons. So, having pointed out these stupidities and lies and dishonesty, let's have a read of these two paragraphs by Richard Vaughan, political correspondent. Tory rebels tore into Boris Johnson yesterday after he was spared an embarrassing defeat on his decision to cut foreign aid spending. The former International Development Secretary, Andrew Mitchell, who is a conservative like Johnson, accused Johnson of treating the Commons with disrespect, as he, Mitchell, warned the decision to slash overseas spending would lead to hundreds of thousands of avoidable deaths. Remember what this phrase avoidable deaths refers to. It refers to Boris Johnson having boasted that he would let thousands of people to die rather than impose the lockdown at the time. And Cummings, giving his quote evidence against Johnson's behavior, Cummings appeared before the Technology and Business Select Committee, very small committee as it appeared, on 26th of May 2021, last week, let's say. He said one of the things that Boris Johnson did was cause the deaths of 127,000 people. And the headlines, strictly based on the evidence, not based on the political, ideological kind of concession by the lying Fleet Street papers. They said that thousands of people died unnecessarily, avoidable deaths. So this is what is going to happen internationally. That is to say, the same Boris Johnson doing the same policy is going to be causing hundreds of thousands of people to die. Deaths that could be avoidable. Deaths of people that shouldn't have been pushed to die. That's what Andrew Mitchell is quoted as saying. It's not the quotation by the Independent, the I newspaper. It is a quotation that is in the contents of the media release, mainly issued by the Press Association internally, that contains both Andrew Mitchell and Theresa May and others who include Jeremy Hunt, a former foreign secretary, who was among the people who branded the move to cut overseas aid money a big mistake, while another ex-cabinet member, David Davies, said that the decision was both harmful and devastating. The Prime Minister's official spokesman said you can expect the Prime Minister to set out more details at the G7 summit this week. Now, that is a complete rubbish. What we can say about this, so this is the one that actually says what Andrew Mitchell has said, that So the people who have been recognized by the BBC as worth being mentioned in this opposition to the cuts to the aid budget include the Archbishop of Canterbury, that is the Anglican chief clergyman, and Bob Geldof, in addition to David Davis and Andrew Mitchell and Theresa May. They're not making revolutionary, radical demands whatsoever. But essentially, the BBC and them, as well as the rest of Fleet Street, is committing the continuing crime of not mentioning the international treaties and charters and conventions agreements and obligations by the British government as a signatory. And as I was saying earlier, the trade-off is that if the UK makes a contribution, and this is 0.7%, is absolutely tokenistic. When they say 14 billion doesn't go to the individuals. 14 billions are spread over the whole globe. And most people in need don't even get a single penny or its equivalent. So the BBC and these MPs and Fleet Street are all committing the racist crime of denying the truth on the ground about what causes hunger and what causes lack of facilities, lack of medicine, and the deadly certain death of children, denied medicine, denied fresh water, getting infected and dying. Those things are daily occurrences across the globe. Well, across the countries in the globe, on the globe, that are in poverty, kept in poverty. Now, the other side of the coin is that all these countries are still being exploited for minerals and other economic resources that Britain and the G7 countries and the other countries, big business, operates from, are looting these countries. Natural resources are not confined to this part or that part of the world. In every country and every part of the world, natural resources are available, and they're being robbed and stolen from those countries by Britain and the G7 countries. So the slogan that these MPs and lobbies are helping the poor countries is completely criminally upside down. It's not true. So the narrative should be reversed, and the rhetoric should be starting by saying, restore to the victim countries the money and the resources that Britain stole and is stealing. That way, the likes of Andrew Murray, Douglas Murray, and Dowden and Johnson can be seen as the crooks and the continuing thieves and criminals that they are, both in terms of racism, both in terms of hostility, anti-Muslim, complicity and collusion and impunity, and of course, in terms of the imposition of poverty that will kill hundreds of thousands of people. So when somebody says that our country and our society, they make the fatal mistake. The same person who is looting the 127,000 or whatever number of victims that actually died, quote, unnecessarily, what is the necessary deaths? That is something that needs to be explored. So those people in Britain who died as a result of Boris Johnson's complete unfitness and negligent and callous, uncaring, cruel policies are part of the deaths across the world because of the policies of the same Boris Johnson, the same negligent person. Make the connection. Foreign aid is not foreign at all. Foreign aid is actually British domestic policy affecting domestic people, the many who are the victims. So what we shall be doing is continuing in the next part, diagnosing the rest of the papers, the rest of the contents, and rest of the topics.